Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly interview show. And this week, I have three very special guests to talk about Death Drop Gorgeous, a wonderful new horror film that is out now. So you all should go check it out. But I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves a little bit. So, Chris, if you want to start off.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Dalpy. I am one of the co-writers and co-directors, as well as one of the stars of Death Drop Gorgeous.
Awesome. And how about you, Brandon?
Good. How are you?
Doing fine.
Good. Yeah, my name is Brandon Perez Sanchez. I'm one of the co-creators and one of the actors in the film. Yeah.
And Mike.
Oh shoot! Sorry, I was muted. I'm Mike Ahern. I'm also one of the co-writers, co-directors, and I play Detective O'Hara in the film.
Papa O'Hara.
Awesome. And I appreciate all your times and you joining me here tonight, recording this little interview here. But I'd love to hear right off the bat, it's like, how did this project come about for all of you?
Brandon, do you want to take it?
Sure. So a year prior to the conception of the screenplay, Chris and I were having just like joking around talking about how the hookup apps and the sex apps can be very easily used by serial killers to do their thing. We're joking about it for a while, brought it up to Mike like almost a year later and was like, hey, we're talking about this. And he was like, let's make it into a movie. To introduce Chris and Mike, we sat around and talked about it, and then just kind of, as you know, there's more to the plot than that. So we started attaching more things to it and making it crazier and crazier, and now we have the film.
And obviously, it's like a lot of films come out of those like little things where it's like, hey, here's an idea, and what if this happened? And then you go from there, and it's just like kind of spirals from there and starts growing, And obviously, it's like that high concept idea is a lot of fun. It's like, well, what if somebody did something really bad with this? Because if you think about it, it's not great. It's probably easy to take advantage of.
There's a very special moment in a time of history where we're all gathering in Mike Ahern's apartment, and he has a glass of whiskey and a full robe on, and about 100 Post-it notes all over the wall. That is essentially what would later become the full plot of Death Drop Gorgeous. So it's like drag queens, glory holes, cocaine, whiskey. We just then turned it into an actual plot.
And that's always the fun part of like that creative process. It's just like either you have, sometimes you're just like going out writing, and sometimes you're just like, here's a bunch of ideas, throw them all around, and like they just come together somehow. And that's the beauty of film, right? And telling stories. Now, obviously, there was a specific idea that kind of brought about this film and its conception, but maybe what are some of the film inspirations that some of you had in terms of creating this film? I guess, Mike, if you want to go first, what were some of the films that it maybe like inspired you in terms of putting this film together?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most obvious ones are things like John Waters, sort of other midnight movies. That sort of like irreverence and cynicism was definitely an inspiration to some of the comedic aspects. But I think something that we don't often mention, that we actually mentioned in another interview, is things like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane and like Sunset Boulevard, like this sort of like very over the top, commanding, like chewing scenes diva was definitely in part inspired Death Drop Gorgeous for me.
At Gloria Swanson.
Yes, yeah.
I remember very distinctly, this was, I think, 2018 maybe, taking my mom on Mother's Day to go see Sunset Boulevard in theaters, and we sat down and the credits started rolling, and she's like, wait, this is like the actual one and not like a remake. I'm like, yeah, I told you I was taking you to see Sunset Boulevard. So it's like that kind of presence, that character, like I could definitely see that in the film when I was watching
for sure.
it.
Oh God, I hope they don't.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I was just gonna say, I hope they don't remake that movie. Just leave it as is, right? So, I'm sorry.
You're like,
think,
don't touch Sunset
Yeah,
Boulevard.
just leave it
I
alone.
think it went on Broadway with like Glenn Close. And
Okay.
I've heard things that like maybe they're gonna adapt that into a film, and I'm like, we'll see. But how about you, Brandon?
I think one of my biggest influences was just like the 80s slasher genre in general. I thought they were just super fun. They're sleazy, they're campy, they're gory, but all prosthetic effects. They have, you know, sequences where a band just starts playing at a club, and you know, I just kind of love that stuff. I think it's just super fun. I think we kind of use that template to you know, make Death Drop, and I think it's yeah, I don't know, like there's like a lot of like driller killer influence in there, and you know, Doom Asylum, and you know, movies like that were kind of made on a small budget that were just kind of, you know, super fun. And I don't know, 80s were a good time.
Absolutely. And it's like, because it's like budgets can be so interesting too, because it's like you could see it all over it if it's like a lower budget thing, or sometimes you can just have fun with it and kind of lean into that. And I think that was one of the things I definitely appreciated about the film, is like leaning into the fact that like these are very obviously prosthetics and having a lot of fun with them. But
Oh yeah.
how about you, Chris?
I love that, like, we kind of hit the two realms of our movie of like that kind of high Hollywood camp, and then like also this like sleazy horror. And I guess like the one part in between that, like, I think is really I'm really inspired by like I really love 90s movies. Like I have like a heart like on, because of there's so many like horror and comedy like were so well merged for like 10 years that like I'll think there was a lot of that genre out. And so I think I've always appreciated like Death Becomes Her, Beetlejuice, that you're walking on these horror elements but with a larger context of humor and comedy that exist as well. So those are major inspirations for me.
And that's a lot of fun too, because it's like comedy and horror, two genres where it's just like so much of it's based off of you're either gonna be afraid or gonna laugh. And it's just like they're gearing towards those two things and hitting on both of them at the same time with like Evil Dead and like stuff like that, where it's just like, this is, I feel like I shouldn't be laughing, but I have to because I'm having so much fun with it. But also it's scaring me a little bit. So but in terms of, I guess, this whole entire process, because like at least from the outside looking in, this seemed like it was a ball to film and put together, because like there just seemed like there was so much energy and fun going on behind the scenes making this film. So to hear from each of you, what did you enjoy most about making this film? So I say maybe Mike, if you want to go first.
Yeah. I think what was most exciting was sort of seeing like these queens. Also, all the drag queens in the film are actual drag queens, and just sort of we gave them some leeway with some characters to sort of like interpret how they want to see fit. And it was just exciting to see them come in and like with their own costumes and makeup and sort of just like bring these like, I don't know, these absurd drag queens to life in front of us. It was especially exciting watching Peyton St. James play Gloria Hole. Like when she was the first time she was on set, it was like, oh shit, like we gotta bring her A game, because she's bringing her like A+ game. So I think watching all the queens sort of like commit to it and like then like go further than that was the most exciting part for me.
And that's really awesome too, because it's like that kind of representation, and there's that feeling of being genuine about it, where it's just like there was a passion here, and you can feel them of like they just lit up the screen. It's like this is them, except maybe turn up a little bit, but like or maybe not. But like it just felt like so much fun seeing them perform on screen. How about you, Brandon? Oh.
Go ahead, Brandon, sorry.
I think the most fun I had really was just kind of like echo with Mike's a little bit, seeing people do what they're good at, seeing like Victoria and Opulence do the special effects, seeing or Scott Miller do special effects, seeing the drag queens perform and do their thing. Our actual actors in the film too, just working with them and watching them do what they're good at. So that was a really fun time to work with all these people and see them in their natural element.
Awesome. And how about you, Chris?
I gotta say, like, I think doing the special, like being part of like the special effects scenes, like I think if I was to think about like my favorite shooting days were always special effects, is because you have this like one shot, one moment where it's like all of it's adding up to, and you have to like, everyone's like waiting for it. You try to get everything done beforehand. And then at one point you're like, but this is when we're going to shoot Ninny Nothing with a blood cannon. And we only get one chance to do it. Or this is where we like gut a character with like a turkey carver, and you can only do it once. And so I think the buildup and excitement of like really capturing that moment, there's like a rawness and a don't fuck it upness that happens with it that I thought was super fun. In addition to just drinking with my friends for 5 years straight and filming it.
That's always fun, right? So that's an added bonus. It was like watching the film, and I think there's two particular moments, and I won't get into too much detail because like I don't want to spoil anything about this film for anybody because you have to experience it. But two particular practical effects moments where I was just like, I lost it because I was just like, it went there, and I'm so glad that it did. All I'm gonna say is somebody's belly, and that was probably one of the biggest ones where I just lost it watching the film. And when you can have that kind of reaction watching a film, like there's something special there where it like hits you in a good spot, and there's definitely a lot of moments like that watching this film.
Oh, thank you.
That's what Brandon always talks about, and I really think it's really important, is his belovedness of 80s horror and rewatchability. And rewatchability is a phrase that we talk about a lot, of creating those kills that you really want to watch again and not that don't get lost in like a more convoluted plot.
Well,
I don't know if you want to say more about that, Brandon.
No, that's pretty spot on.
Because like it's an interesting thing to think about, because it's like there's certain films that you watch, I'm like, this was an amazing film, never want to watch this again. You're just like, I'm good, I've experienced this, I don't know if I can or really want to experience it again. And then you have those kinds of films where it's just like, anytime my friends want to come over and we just want to have a ball, this is the film I'm going to throw on, because it's just that much fun. And I could definitely see like this one becoming one of those kinds of like, friends are over, throw it on TV, or like some kind of like late night theater experience, which that would be amazing, experiencing this in a theater with a whole bunch of other people late at night just going for it. But Brandon, what were you going to say?
Oh no, I think that's honestly like it's true environment is what you just said, like midnight movie, drive-in movie, having a large group of people over. I'm glad that people are like really getting invested in like some of the social comments here in our film, which is awesome. But I think I just want people to have fun with it. Like this, it's like you said, it's a midnight movie, fun with your friends, like just kind of relax and drink and watch it.
Absolutely. And when you can tell that you all were having fun with it, that makes it even easier to have fun watching it, I think. And I think the one question I really wanted to ask about the film specifically is if each of you could give a little insight on, like, you had to pitch this to somebody. What is that one thing, this is why you have to watch this movie?
That's a good question. Oh my God, what is the one thing? It'll probably, I guess my thing would be it has a kill in the movie that you will never ever forget for the rest of your life.
I think I got mine.
Go ahead, Chris.
Drag may not be what you think it is.
There you go. How about you, Brandon?
I just love to sell it as like it's one of the first midnight movies entirely told through a queer experience by queer people, and you're not going to see anything like it.
And isn't that what we're all going for, right? it's always special when you actually like see a film and like I have never seen anything like this before, and
Right.
I'm never gonna forget it. Because
I
like,
remember.
go ahead, Mike.
I was just saying. I remember like so we were distributed by Dark Star, and there was like some information they wanted me to fill out, and it was like the question was like current movies that are like Death Drop gorgeous or something, or it was something to that effect. Like they wanted like movies that were akin to it that were like currently out, because obviously there's plenty we can like harken back to, like 80 slashers and John Waters and stuff like that, but I just like sat there and I literally just typed there isn't a movie like Death Drop just out right now, because there isn't. I don't know that you would see something like this at this time. There's like maybe, I don't know, some other queer films that could come close, but I don't think they have the same tone as we do.
And I think I appreciate that you keep bringing back how fun the movie is to watch and to make. And like, I also look for that. Like when I'm watching a TV show or I'm watching a movie, I'm like, I feel like I wish I said to myself, they looked like they had a lot of fucking fun doing this. Like, I don't get to say that as often as I would like to.
Absolutely. And like, it's interesting, Mike, that you brought up the, like, how are we going to pitch this kind of thing? Because everybody loves like a line, that elevator pitch of like, this meets this.
Right.
And, or you could be like, you'll never see a film like this. And I know a lot of people, it's like, especially interacting with like a lot of reviewers and stuff like that, is like the big thing is like, there's not a whole lot of originality out there. It's like everything's a sequel or a franchise or something. And when you can come across something as original and bold and ambitious and just going for it like this film, that's exciting to see. And I could definitely attest, like, just specifically looking at Twitter, all the love that this film's getting makes me happy, because it's like, these are one of those kinds of films where it's like, it's small and hopefully getting a lot more attention because it deserves it. It's a lot of fun. And,
Thank you.
but yeah, and the pitches that you came up with are great, because it's like, I know exactly what you're talking about, Mike, and I'm like, I will never forget that. And it's like, that's the fun thing, because it's like a lot of those slasher movies, it's like, because there's so many of them, like how many Halloween films have there been, how many Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, but you remember the kills, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I remember that one from that movie, and that's what really sticks in your brain. And like having something like that really captures your imagination, it's a lot of fun.
I think you're going to see more of that in the independent film world as things progress. I mean, aside from, I think Malignant has some gore in it, but I think like if you're really looking for the gross out stuff, it's not going to be in mainstream cinema anymore. I feel like it's been really safe lately, honestly. So I think now it's the underground's job to keep things subversive and nasty. So I hope that keeps up.
Absolutely. And that's really like the independent film is where you could have that flexibility.
Oh yeah.
It's like, and it's interesting because it's like a lot of the reviews are, it's like, Malignant is refreshing. This is something different we haven't seen in a long time. It's just like, for like a big movie like that. And it's like, you really don't get to see like the buckets of blood and all kinds of stuff like that and craziness like that.
No, it's true.
For sure.
Now, with all that talk about the film, I really hope everybody goes checks it out. And with all of you here, it's time to talk, maybe finding out a little bit about each of you in terms of your perspective on movies. So now thinking about this, I'm going to ask the question that everybody either is like, oh, easy answer. It's like, why do you ask me this anymore? But it's like, each of you, what's your favorite film?
My favorite film is I love Clive Barker a lot, and I think Hellraiser is my favorite film. It's such a beautiful movie. It's just I think the novel is very complex, and there's a lot of interesting things in there. But take that and turn it into a film. I think he did an excellent job with it. I love horror, fantasy, and folk horror. I just think that movie is just gorgeous, and it's just so fun. That's my favorite.
And that's an awesome thing too, is like mixing that horror with like the fantasy elements. It's like you could go to so many different places.
Oh yeah,
so many strange places. And I remember watching. My brother is a huge like slasher fan, So like it's funny because I didn't watch horror movies growing up, except my brother had them on all the time. And Hellraiser was definitely one of them. I was just like, what's going on here? And it goes there. I don't think I've watched it in so many years. Definitely worth checking out again.
The second
But,
one's
how about you, Chris?
I have too many interests to say I have a favorite. Like,
That is okay.
I think if I like my letterbox profile actually is like my 4 kind of archetypes of like movies and like sci-fi, horror, Alien. Like the original Alien is like hard to fight. Like it is perfect in so many ways. But then I also love like animation, illustration, and also sci-fi drama. So Akira is still one of my favorite films of all times. Then like super gay stuff like Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and then Death Becomes Her are like 2 of like other major inspiration movies of. I think if you wrap all of that into a ball, you kind of get my personality. So that's what I got.
Awesome. I recently rewatched Akira because I think it's the 30th anniversary of coming out in America this year. And it's still really impressive and out there and something to behold. And you can't go wrong with Alien. Just like, and the practical effects and everything of just like, like that little mouth just shooting out at you. Or surprise at dinner for those who haven't seen it. So there you go. How about you, Mike?
Gosh, Alien's definitely up there, but I am going to say Pan's Labyrinth. I think from beginning to end, it's a perfect film. I remember being so blown away by just like how I don't know. It's just like the story is so beautiful and terrifying, and the creatures, like the imagination that is in it is I always loved. I always like gravitated towards sort of like fantasy when I was younger, so I loved Lord of the Rings, but even Lord of the Rings has a lot of like horrific moments. So I think like Pan's Labyrinth was like the full package for me. Like as someone who appreciates good storytelling and like sort of a fantasy imagination. So I'm gonna say Pan's Labyrinth is probably my favorite film.
Awesome. I have a podcast with some of my friends, and each month we pick a film to watch and discuss on the podcast. And this past month was Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, my one friend Matt is a huge Guillermo del Toro fan. We were in film club together in college, was actually how we met. And he did a special double feature of The Devil's Backbone, which that is a great one too. So like I know probably a lot more people have seen Pan's Labyrinth, but if you haven't seen that, that's also some great supernatural, like fable type horror film from Guillermo del Toro. He also did Let the Right One In, which was such a fantastic look at vampire genre. And but like Pan's Labyrinth, and it's so interesting watching it now with like, because obviously you have the fable, you have the fantasy, the pale man, which is absolutely terrifying. But also, what's even more terrifying is all the lovely fascists that we have throughout the film, and it's like
it's
a little too relevant right now.
It is a little too relevant. And then I read like, I don't know if this was like a made-up quote by the internet, but he sort of explained the pale man and like what he stood for, and it was even still a little too close to home, like how he just has like this like bounty in front of him, and he has like everything he could ever want, but if you touch if you even touch one piece of his food, it's like it awakens the creature. So which is very much about rich white people. So yeah,
and fair on the nose. It's like, don't take that grape.
Not right, that single grape. Yeah,
we're coming for you.
I need it all. Yeah.
And that's a very interesting point too, because like obviously it works on that like horror element, and like I appreciate you bring up Lord of the Rings, which I have some posters in my office back there.
Oh, nice.
But specifically, it's like you could tell Peter Jackson did horror films before he did Lord of the Rings, because as a 10-year-old in the theater watching Fellowship of the Ring for the first time, Scary Bilbo is scary.
And the orcs and the oh my god, I can't believe them. the Nazgul, like all
Yep.
terrifying. Like, and I was 11, and it was like I remember that like definitely left an impression. Like not a horror movie, but like still kind of creepy for a kid's adventure fantasy.
Because with especially in Return of the King with like Shalab's lair, that's a
Oh
horror
yeah,
scene. That whole
I
entire
hate
thing is
spiders, so
very
I
obviously
yeah,
that. And I remember seeing like when Minas Morgul, they shot like that beam up in the air and the terrifying music. I'm like, what is going on here? And
yeah.
it's just like it works on so many different levels. They're actually my favorite films. So,
Okay,
and
cool. Yeah,
there's those are the kinds of films that like do it all. It has a
Yeah,
little bit of everything, and that's always cool to see in a film.
for sure.
But I appreciate all the different kinds of perspectives and different films that you all brought up. And this one going a little bit back because like generally I like to ask something that like going back to like when that love for movies kind of came around. So for each of you, it was like maybe it was a particular film that you watched that inspired you to love movies or like a particular thing that happened. But like what was that like jumping off point for each of you when it came to really loving film?
like I was a really nerdy kid and read a lot, like kindergarten through seventh grade. Like I got in trouble with reading class all the time. But all I read was like folklore and mythology, urban legends, scary stories, and then slowly transitioned that into horror films, and then just kind of didn't really turn back from there. So um, I think just reading those books is kind of what got me to that.
I was also a very avid reader as a kid, and like being able to get lost in that way, and then obviously you're reading it, you're imagining it, and like film, it's like it brings that to you, and it's such a interesting thing. And some of the time they get it right when they try to take a book and actually turn it into the film.
Oh
Fortunately,
yeah.
not as great most of the time. But Chris, what were you gonna say?
Similar to Brandon, like I'm the youngest of four, and a family that like I always just describe us as a family of creeps. We all were just like drawn to horror, whether it's literature, comics, movies, TV shows. Like as like a young kid, my mom would like read us like gothic horror stories over like an open fire kind of thing because that was like her genre. But growing up, we just all consumed horror. So I probably watched movies that I should not have been watching at like age 5, but like with my family. So I have like a lot of nostalgia with like the idea of like, like being 5 and watching X-Files and like the beginning sequence starting and like hiding my eyes, but then peeking. So it's just really buried deep into like movies and horror movies specifically, or just like burned deep into like my being.
Awesome. And like it's funny, Chris, because you brought up a great question too. Is like, what's a film that you probably watched or like a show way before you were supposed to?
You know what really fucked me up? Real fucked me up. I would not rewatch it because I guarantee it's shitty. But the Perfect Storm I watched as a kid, and it was like the Stephen King like kind of mini series that they released.
Yeah, I
But for
remember that.
some reason, that one just like really bothered me as a kid, and I think it was like the old lady gouging her eyes out or something. I just it was like that one stuck with me for living in rural wintry New Hampshire.
That'll stick with you. I know for me personally, so I grew up in a household with my grandparents, and my grandfather made me watch The Godfather when I was 10. And it's just like, this is your culture, because I'm an Italian American from New Jersey, mind you. So it's just like, this is your culture. Didn't matter what my mom said. He sat my brother and I down and we watched it. And the fun part is it's like, of course, my mom covered my eyes when they had nudity, but like, I watched people get like lit up. So a little commentary on America just in general. But like, and also watched a lot of James Bond as a kid. Like 8-year-old Shane watched all James Bond movies. And now you're like, best male role model as a kid growing up. And it's just still now, I'm going to be seeing No Time to Die when that comes out in a couple weeks. So I'm going to be there. But that's always an interesting perspective to have too. How about you, Mike?
Mine would actually probably be Lord of the Rings. So rather than just like rehashing Lord of the Rings again, something that I was thinking about the other day is like, I'll change it to horror. Is that I think the horror movies that sort of like stuck with me when I was younger, that like maybe gravitated me toward the genre, are always the ones that like affect you after you turn off the movie, but for like a long period of time. Like I remember the Blair Witch Project like really terrified me of the woods, and I grew up around the woods and like would play manhunt with like the neighborhood kids and stuff, and I wouldn't go in the woods. And Jaws, like those were the two that even now I went to the beach and I was like on the Cape, like in the water, no sharks around, but you're always like, but what if? And I think that films that can have that sort of power and that sort of sway are like equally fascinating but also terrifying. That I don't know, like Jaws forever scared a nation of the ocean, and the Blair Witch Project, I go in the woods now, so it's fine. But you still like have those moments where you're like camping and you'll wake up and you'll be like, but what if I find a pile of rocks outside of my tent? Even now when I'm like 31.
Oh, my grandmother, I mentioned I grew up with my grandparents, and she never went in the ocean again.
Oh my
Like
God, ever
after
again?
1975, never again. We go to the beach. Nope. She didn't go in the water. And the crazy thing is, like, that's based off of a story from New Jersey. So, and it's
Oh,
really close to home.
yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
yeah, she never went back in.
I hope that Death Drop Gorgeous makes people never use glory holes again.
I don't want to be that sex negative.
No,
I want them
neither.
to use glory holes, but think of us when they use glory holes.
They're gonna use it and be like, you know what? I remember that movie that I watched. Hope that doesn't happen to me.
Yeah.
So very sex positive reaction here, but it's like, but you will think of me, kind of thing. So there we go. That's the kind of vibe we're trying to get with this film. Now, in terms of the, I always like to ask this question too. We're getting towards the end of our time here, but this could be a quick one, or depending on what your memory is. But what's the earliest memory you all have of actually like going out and seeing a movie?
Oh wow.
Casper. I'm pretty
There
sure
you go.
Casper was the first movie I saw in theaters.
I had all of those that came out around that time on VHS. That was always a fun time watching Casper.
I think like the first Ninja Turtles or the first the Tim Burton Batman, maybe. I remember those pretty vividly.
Awesome. I see a sense of pattern of like dark gothic choices here as children, so maybe it's how we got here.
Blame our parents. They fucked us up.
My parents were weird. They didn't like take us to the movies, and the first movie I saw was Mulan. So not dark gothic. I wish I was that cool, but it was Disney's Mulan. Which,
I don't know, when the Huns attacked, that was pretty dark.
the Huns were terrifying. I remember being specifically very scared of like the amount of men that were coming over that pass to go fight, and I guess also challenging gender norms, which is cool. So there we go.
And make a
I had,
man
a
out of
Mulan,
you.
I had a Mulan Barbie and a Pocahontas Barbie that I specifically like asked for myself. The fact that everyone was so surprised I ended up gay, I'm like, you really missed this. Like, I was like, these are mine.
I was trying to tell you something, but I remember my first movie being Space Jam. So not dark at all, but
I fucking love Space Jam.
Yeah,
I can't
no, I
believe they're
love Space
remaking
Jam.
it.
It's remade.
It's been remade, Chris.
Yeah, it came out all in theaters and HBO Max this summer, and
I did not watch.
I don't know if like it's a matter of like this was very much a 90s movie. Like, yeah, the Pulp Fiction references, which like no 4-year-old, 5-year-old when I went was getting Pulp Fiction references in the middle of a Looney Tunes movie. But like there's that spirit about it. It was a brisk 90 minutes. This was like 2 hours. And I'm not the hugest basketball fan, but I don't know if LeBron's an MJ. But like, I don't know. It didn't work as well for me. And also it just felt like, let's throw as many movie references as possible in this and forget about the fun that the first movie actually had in it.
Right,
But
right.
another one for me, I think one of my biggest influence going to the movies as a kid for the first time was seeing Shrek, because I was 10 years old and I had a ball, and apparently my mom and my aunt were mortified because they were like sitting there, and like when Gingy's like, eat me, and it's just like, what am I taking my kids to go see? And like as an adult, I love Shrek so much because it just gets better with age, because then you do get all the all the crazy things that they were referencing in that film. And it's just like, those are special kind of films that just get better as you grow older and you just get more enjoyment out of it.
I always felt like Death Drop Gorgeous and Shrek had a lot in common, you know? Like, with
Just very misunderstood. It's just like, just want to live their lives.
there's a
And
transformation at the end.
there you go. So many connections to Shrek. Didn't even realize it. But to wrap up this interview, I always like to ask who I have on the show, what do you love most about movies?
I think for me, it's just the escape and being able to shut your mind down for a little bit. I mean, you can do that with reading, you can do that with any other kind of form of art, but I think with film, you get, there's so much art, so many different mediums are happening at the same time. It's visual, you have the score, you have the soundtrack. It's just, I do like, I think it's like for someone like me that's like so all over the place and like almost ADHD, it's nice to have like all that at once in one place so I can sit and watch it and hopefully not pick up my phone.
Absolutely. That's why the theater's better. It gives you an excuse to turn that phone off, not get distracted by it. But that escapism is also my biggest thing too. How about you, Chris?
Definitely the magic of it. Like, I'm a big daydreamer. I'm a vivid dreamer, like an actual sleep dreamer. And to see kind of other worlds be like, to be able to create worlds is one of the coolest things that a person can do, whether you're writing, drawing it, filming it. I think the ability to create something that isn't of this world. Like, I'll watch a documentary or like kind of like, nonfiction stuff, but it's not my favorite. Like, if I'm going to watch something, I really want to be taken to a different world.
I can definitely appreciate that. And how about you, Mike?
I can definitely echo some of those sentiments that Chris just said about taking to another world. Because when I was a kid, I was just big on like Lord of the Rings, like I said, like goes back to Lord of the Rings. Like, it was so fascinating to me that there was just like this whole world. There was like a land that someone created. But to not just copy what Chris said, I think I always loved telling stories when I was a kid. I love a story. And I think what I love about a story is sort of like how I do believe that there's an escapism to movies, but I also believe that there is a degree of like, you sort of like find maybe a little bit of yourself, even if it's in a story that you don't like, it's so far from the world you're living. And I think it sometimes provides like some clarity to some things you're working through. Like I referenced Rosemary's Baby when we first hopped in because I changed my facial hair and she gets a haircut when her life is going out of control. And now I have that reference all the time. It's like, why do I feel the need to have a mustache right now? And it's like, oh, like I'm a little bit of a like spiraling right now. And I just remember watching Rosemary's Baby and thinking that story was so good and I didn't want it to end. And it's very rare that I'm watching a film that I'm like, I don't want this to end. Like, I want to continue on this story. I want to see what happens. And I think like, I don't know, I just love a good story. And the first thing I notice when a film is poor is I realize that like, this is not a good story. And this is not an interesting story. And it's like, I don't know, it just doesn't have the it factor. And I don't necessarily know exactly what that is, but I feel like I just know it like instinctively. So yeah.
I can definitely appreciate that. It's like, what happened to that baby? It
Right.
stay a
I
baby
just
forever.
I wanted more, which was very weird because like it ended in the perfect spot, but I just was like, no, wait, like this was so beautiful and this story was so fascinating on so many levels. But yeah.
Well,
I heard
go
the
ahead,
baby
Chris.
just grew up to be an accountant, so like they actually did end the story where they were supposed to, because they're like,
Oh,
I guess
thank
you're
God.
just like a normal evil baby.
Actually, they just they became they went to Wall Street. That's what happened. So there we go. But I appreciate all of you hopping on and taking the time to chat with me today. And I was so happy that I got a bit of perspective on your new film, Death Drop Gorgeous, and also from all of you on your perspectives on movies. And I really hope all of you out there watching this go and check out this film, because this is so much fun. It's just an absolute blast. And it's a special kind of ride that I think is worth taking. So there you go.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that this conversation was so in depth about like not just the movie, but like our relationship to movies, which is a really exciting opportunity to have.
Well, I appreciate that you all were open enough and shared too. But
So now we should probably check on Mike though. He keeps saying he's spiraling. I don't want to. I want to just glaze that over.
That's a very dramatic word. I'm fine.
it was important that we checked though,
Yeah.
Thank you.
because then by the end of the video, everyone's like, "There were signs here," and you're all just completely ignoring them.
He keeps calling out for help, but nobody listens.
But thank you all so much, and thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.
You even have a slogan.